The Australian Government has just released the first ever National Climate Risk Assessment, which predicts how the worsening effects of extreme heat, fires, floods, droughts, marine heat waves and coastal inundation will likely affect us into the future. In this video, we'll see what's predicted specifically for South Queensland, and I'll also show you a really useful online tool that can allow you to see the expected changes for your specific LGA wherever in Australia you are. I'll start with a little background and some info about the report itself. It was a massive undertaking. The assessment involved over 250 climate experts, but also drew on the knowledge of over 2,000 specialists. It relied on data and modelling from the Australian Climate Service in partnership with major institutions, including the CSIRO, the Australian Bureau of Statistics, Geosciences Australia, and the Bureau of Meteorology. The national assessment examined 10 priority hazards. The assessment also identified 56 nationally significant climate risks and narrowed them down to 11 priority risks. The assessment also considered risks on 8 key systems. The climate has warmed by 1.2 degrees Celsius since pre-industrial times, and the report looks at what we can expect at 1.5, 2 and 3 degrees of global warming. For some context, we're on track for a 2.7 degree rise by the end of the century if no action is taken. For the assessment, Australia was divided into 11 regions, including the Australian Antarctic territories. Since this is the Brisbane channel, we'll look specifically at some of the impacts that are predicted for the Queensland South region before I show you how to see the impact specific to where you live. I'm sure Tropical Cyclone Alfred is still fresh in people's memories, and I have good and bad news for what's forecast as far as cyclone and extratropical storms go. Alfred was notable due to its path that led it southward toward Brisbane, and while the report suggests that a small southward shift in cyclone tracks is possible, that prediction is rated at a low level of confidence. However, the research team are more confident that the frequency of tropical cyclones and extratropical storms, that is the ones that occur outside the tropics, will see a reduction over time. That's good news. But they are also reasonably confident that the extreme weather will have greater impacts when it does occur. Changes in rainfall intensity and sea levels will bring higher chance of coastal flooding from future extratropical storms. That's not great news for Bayside residents in Moreton Bay, Brisbane and the Redlands. Our neck of the woods is also likely to see an increase in heavy runoff events, which could also lead to higher risk of flooding. The report predicts that with a medium level of confidence. It's no secret that flooding is an inevitability here in Brisbane, so it'll become increasingly important to be aware of your home's risk of flooding. So I definitely recommend being across your area's flood maps, which you'll be able to find on your local council's website. One impact we can expect with increased chance of storm damage and flooding is further increased insurance premiums. Definitely not good news. Rising sea levels will impact different parts of Australia to different degrees. Here on Greater Brisbane LGA coastlines, tidal extremes will increase about halfway between the most and least affected parts of the country. Some of the impacts include coastal erosion, which we've already seen in parts of the Redlands, and inundation of low-lying properties. With declines in groundwater levels, rising sea levels threaten fresh water supplies through seawater intrusion into aquifers. If we look at the levels of exposure to sea level rises in Queensland South specifically, it's clear that this will become an increasingly serious concern if temperature increases continue to track the way they have to date. The report mentions that for sea level rise projected for 2030, 7% of small businesses in Queensland South will be in high-risk locations and 6% in very high-risk locations. That means these businesses could face impacts including business interruption, and the compounding effects of inundation, flooding and erosion could make these small businesses unviable. Turning to the risk of being affected by floods, bushfires, tropical cyclones or heat waves, the proportion of homes in Queensland South at high or very high risk levels is set to increase as temperatures rise, and the overall trend is for properties to move to increased levels of risk with increases in global temperatures. The percentage of small businesses affected by those 4 events, floods, bushfires, tropical cyclones and heat waves, follows a similar trend. However, there's a way to see how your area will be affected by increases of 1.5, 2 and 3 degrees and compare that to your current situation, not just in terms of temperatures, but also a range of other things such as rainfall, bushfire weather and extreme runoff, basically flooding. But first, let's take a look at how likely the natural ecosystems in this part of Australia are to be able to adapt to the impacts of climate change, and it's not great news. The Bioclimatic Ecosystem Resilience Indicator, or BERI, measures the capacity of various ecosystems to retain biological diversity in the face of climate change. Queensland South, along with Victoria, has the lowest average BERI score, with low resilience in most ecosystem categories. What this means is that the plants and animals that make up the ecosystems in our part of Australia will likely change significantly with increases in temperature. Before I get to how you can track projected changes to a range of different factors in your local area, a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, winner of Best International Travel Insurance for Value in Finder's 2024 Travel Insurance Awards. Wise and Silent Travel Insurance won the 2024 Value Award because it costs less on average but covers you for more. They're also the official travel insurance provider for Australian passengers on Scoot Airlines. Backed by a global insurance provider and a 24/7 medical assistance team, the rave reviews on Trustpilot confirm that you can travel with total peace of mind if you choose Wise and Silent for your next overseas trip. Click this QR code or the link in the video description to get an exclusive 10% discount on your premium. Okay, let's look now at how we can see in your specific part of Australia what the impacts of climate change are likely to be at 1.5, 2 and 3 degrees. To find out, you've got to go to the Australian Climate Services Data Explorer, which I've linked in the video description. And so that will bring you to this map of Australia where you see this thing saying regions. So you click on that, and you can see NCRA regions and then local government areas. So you can see in your local government area the kind of impact the changes in global temperatures will have on various aspects of the weather. We'll click on local government areas and you see the map. So let's zoom into Brisbane. All right, so here's Brisbane, Moreton Bay, Ipswich, Logan, and Redlands. So I'm going to click on Brisbane here. And here we can also choose the hazard or variable that we're looking at. This is heat waves, and it's showing us the global warming level of 1.2, which is the current level. So this is the situation, and it's showing you the number of heat wave days under the current situation. So you can see for most of Brisbane, it's this dark yellow color. So that's between about 4 and 6 days of heat wave each year. But we can change that. We can also look at the hottest heat wave temperature. You can see most of Brisbane here. The hottest heat wave temperature is between 36 and 38. In these parts close to Ipswich, it's more between 38 and 40. We could click on Ipswich and see that, yes, for Ipswich, at the moment, under the current 1.2 degree increase in global temperatures, it's looking like the hottest days are going to be between 38 and 40 degrees. If it's 1.5 degrees, you can see that we're starting to get between 40 and 42 degrees areas. If we go up to 2 degrees of warming, that area of 40 to 42 degrees has now spread to almost all of Ipswich. But that's just one aspect, that's just heat waves. You can also look at all of these other things: extreme temperature, bushfire weather, extreme rainfall, extreme runoff. So this tool is a new thing that's come out with the climate report and the risk assessment. And it's a really interesting thing to have a bit of a play around with. So that's what I really wanted to show you. Obviously, there's a lot of details that are yet to come out. There's not a lot of detail in terms of specific, like looking at how is Brisbane going to be affected or Moreton Bay. There's still a lack of fine detail. The project, the assessment gives an overall view of the country and the situation in wider areas, but it's a little more challenging to find really specific details. So I've shared pretty much everything that I could find, at least in the one day since the report was released. But those details may become clearer as we go. If you found this useful in any way or interesting, then you can say thanks by buying me a coffee. There's a QR code there for that, or you can actually support the channel more long term by becoming a member, and I'd like to thank these members for continuing to support the channel. Apart from that, don't forget every Sunday at 4 o'clock, we put out a weekly update about everything that's happening in the Greater Brisbane area to keep you in the loop. And then some random other things like this video in those midweek periods. So make sure you're subscribed, give this video a thumbs up. It does help the channel, and I'll see you.